From being hailed as the crypto wonder kid to now possibly facing up to 115 years in prison, Sam Bankman-Fried's downfall is one for the books, and let me tell you why. For starters, FTX was considered a leading player in the crypto market. The company under Bankman-Fried was being hailed by everyone left and right. Even if you didn't know what they did, there's no chance that you never saw the logo. It was practically everywhere in almost every corner of the world. But it all started when two of the most powerful government departments in the U.S. got involved. Specifically, the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission. They began investigating FTX for alleged misconduct, and the news sent shockwaves throughout the industry. And for good reason, too. SBF had been the frontrunner for the effective altruism movement. A savior, if I must, for all sorts of cryptocurrencies and Web 3.0 companies in distress. But the situation went from bad to worse when the Securities Commission of the Bahamas froze all assets associated with FTX digital assets. And that's where the real trouble for Bankman-Fried started. Because before this, everything was just being said. This was the first time he saw the consequences of his actions. And now that he's way past the point of no return, people, especially those who know the law, have a very strong idea of how much he'll have to pay for his crimes. And one such possibility is that he might have to face a lifetime behind bars. Now imagine this. The 31-year-old, who was literally the face of the entire industry once upon a time, will have to face probably some of the cruelest punishment that he could receive. But he's got a crime to go with it. The charges levied against him by the prosecutors are so serious that even at best, he's looking at a very, very long time in prison. A former assistant U.S. attorney, Nick Ackerman, has revealed it all. He specialized in white-collar crime prosecution for the Southern District of New York, so it makes sense to take his word seriously. Ackerman predicts that this crypto industry leader is in for some serious jail time, and we're not talking a few years here. In fact, he believes that SBF could be facing up to 10 years, and that's if we're being lenient. It definitely gets worse than that. The sentence may start at around 10 years, but it could multiply into much more as the investigation moves further. 20 years? 30 years? Maybe even over 100 years. That's all on the table at the moment, and the uncertainty is probably causing SBF the most amount of stress. Because let's be honest, he already knows that he's going to receive jail time. But how long is the duration going to be? Nobody knows. The implications for the industry as a whole are enormous, and so are the allegations. Even if one of these is effectively prosecuted, Bankman-Fried is in hot water. The federal case alleges that Bankman-Fried engaged in wire fraud, as he apparently deceived customers and investors to funnel billions of dollars into his other ventures, one of which is Alameda Research, a trading firm he founded. The accusations suggest that Bankman-Fried misrepresented the nature of his investments, used false data to inflate the value of his funds, and diverted customers' funds for his own use. The indictment also alleges that he conspired to commit securities and commodities fraud. What's more, Bankman-Fried is also accused of money laundering and violating campaign finance laws. The allegation is that he used his personal funds to make large donations to political campaigns in violation of federal law. The charges against him are serious and could result in significant fines and jail time if he's convicted. Just getting convicted of wire fraud once is punishable by 20 years behind bars. So you see what that could spiral into? And again, it's all under investigation still, so you never know how much worse it could get. But let's be honest, the damage is too much. In fact, it's almost irreversible at this point. In addition to the wire fraud, money laundering, and campaign finance law violations I mentioned earlier, it turns out that the former CEO of FTX is also facing some serious allegations from the Securities and Exchange Commission, as well as the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. According to the SEC, Bankman-Fried misled investors and failed to disclose certain conflicts of interest, while the CFTC has charged him with outright fraud. This news comes on top of the already mind-blowing revelation that Bankman-Fried resigned from FTX when the company filed for bankruptcy protection, leaving behind a staggering debt estimated at more than $3.1 billion to over 1 million individuals and organizations. And get this, Bankman-Fried claims that he had no idea how extensive the problems at FTX were. He says he never intended to mix customer funds with Alameda's investments. But is that enough for him to avoid prison? I don't think so. And neither does Ackerman. He thinks that the scale of the alleged crime, which involves a multi-billion-dollar fraud, will put him in prison for a long time. Even worse is the fact that the crime wasn't a one-off thing. It was committed over several years. But here's the somewhat interesting or annoying part, however you might view it. All of these allegations are yet to be proven. Yep, at this point, everything's just speculation. Bankman-Fried has not yet been charged, tried, or convicted of any crimes. It's frustrating, yes, but that's the standard procedure for convicting someone for a crime they may or may not have committed, especially one of this scale. The investigation is going to take months, and to get the complete picture, we could even be looking at years. However, Richard Levin, a fintech and regulation expert, has some views. He's represented clients before the Securities and Exchange Commission, Commodity Futures Trading Commission, and Congress. And he believes that Bankman-Fried faces 3 different legal threats in the U.S. According to Levin, the first is criminal action from the U.S. Department of Justice for possible violations of security laws, bank fraud laws, and wire fraud laws. The second is a civil action from the Securities and Exchange Commission, which alleges that Bankman-Fried misled investors. The third is civil action from the Commodities Future Trading Commission, which has charged him with fraud. Oh, but there's a new development as well. Like bribing Chinese officials? How about an allegation of paying tens of millions of dollars in bribes to at least one Chinese government official? That's what the federal prosecutors claim. The indictment claims SBF and his associates directed and caused the transfer of at least $40 million in cryptocurrency, all in an attempt to benefit Chinese officials. Why, you ask? So that he could influence them to unfreeze accounts belonging to Alameda Research. These accounts were the target of a freezing order by Chinese police and contained about $1 billion worth of cryptocurrency. He did really try, though, to somehow get the accounts unfrozen, but nothing worked. Eventually, he agreed to pay a bribe, a multi-million-dollar one at that, to get the job done. But again, it's not easy to prove all that. That's why Ackerman thinks that this will indeed take a lot of time. According to him, the incident on Tuesday, a day after his arrest, was just the tip of the iceberg. Sure, there's been a lot of development since then, but it's still not enough. Of course, this isn't a one-man job, but also remember that Bankman-Fried is still considered innocent until proven guilty. Despite this, he seems to be preparing a strong legal defense. His parents, who are both law professors at Stanford University, have been by his side since November. They even attended his initial hearing in the Bahamas. Having said that, currently he's under house arrest, so there's some proof of his wrongdoings with the authorities. So there you have it. All the arrows point towards SBF facing life in prison.